Okay, data-driven branding, transforming the consumer experience. And who better to talk about that than an attorney? Because when you think about data-driven branding, you think legal, right? Me neither. I didn't think so. But nonetheless, here we are. And luckily, I'm joined with people who actually know what they're talking about. And I'll start by my farthest hand side with Scott Jennings, who is the CEO of PANTRY. Next to Scott is Todd Rosales, who is the market manager of Florida for both Alien Labs and Connected Cannabis Company, both two great companies. And final is Scott Jennings from, Josh Hoffman, CEO of JH Ideas. And I'll pass it over to Scott, and then we'll just go one by one and kind of just give a brief intro, maybe like 1 or 2 minutes.
Sure. So my career started on Wall Street. I spent 10 years on Wall Street, and then I moved over to a private equity firm investing in cannabis, which then eventually led me starting PANTRY 6 years ago. It's a healthy edible brand that pairs adaptogens and edibles together to address functional needs and major ailments for consumers. So think about sleep, relaxation, pain. We really want to solve those consumer problems and provide a healthy edible for them. We're based in California, looking to expand out here in Florida.
I'm Todd Rosales. I started my career, created the Elevate Your Grind podcast for Cannabis Lab, hosted that for about 4 years, 250 episodes, and I was the co-founder of Ricky Williams' brand Heisman, did that for 2 years, and then now I run the Florida market for Connected International, which runs Connected Cannabis and Alien Labs, and we have a partnership with Trulieve where you can find our products.
I'm Josh. Nice to meet everyone here. I have a long history in cannabis. I started selling when I was 13, growing when I was 18, and sold my first cannabis company around 30, which is it's still in operation as a cultivation. From there, I moved into dispensary and helped scale an award-winning company called Spark out in California. And then from there, moved over to PAX and helped them turn the Jewel into the Era, and then moved over to Green Lane, helped them acquire a few companies, and then went out on my own and started making hardware for companies that need help making hardware and bringing it to the market, as well as marketing it, advertising it, and all those things. So part product developer and part marketing.
And then, just a little bit about myself. Vijay, Choksi. I'm a partner at Fox Rothschild. It is a large firm, 1,000 attorneys. I'm based out of West Palm Beach. Before Fox, I was with Ianthus Capital Management, acting as their senior director of compliance and general counsel, mainly Florida for their Florida asset, which is, you may know it as Grow Healthy. I guess let's go ahead and get started. In your experience, data runs the world, right? We can all agree on that. But as it relates to cannabis, how has data transformed at least the strategies from a branding perspective in the entire cannabis industry? And I'll just open it up for this entire group to kind of chime in on that, what your experiences are.
Sure. This industry is no different than any other when it comes to data or any CPG product. With both brands, with Heisman, it was very high-level data looking at which markets that we should be evaluating, what the market opportunity is, what the market caps are now, the total population, and it's combination of data sets. Like right now, most of the pay data that you get are, dispensary or POS data, but a lot of people are not combining that with the generally available data like traffic data or population data or anything along those lines. With Connected and Alien Labs working through Trulieve, we are a little beholden to what they provide us, but even in that scenario within one state, the state of Florida, it's a 9-hour drive from Miami to Pensacola. It is, it operates as a vastly different market, so knowing what's popular in each area, what's gonna move, like you can't just send something somewhere and expect it to move. You have to adjust it based on what the population wants, and without any kind of data, you're just flying blind.
Yeah, for me, cannabis is a new industry, so I think data is nascent, and I think it can be sloppy. I think it can be misleading, and I got to realize that firsthand. I think the data that's personal around consumption, why I consume, what does it do for me, it helps me sleep, it helps with my pain. I think that data is pretty rock solid. But when you look at navigating these markets, as Todd said, Florida's huge, California's huge. Looking at the data as it comes in, it can be very sloppy and it can be misleading. A lot of the dispensaries will tell you, drop your prices, it will move more volume, right? But we'll have advisors from Kellogg's and they'll say, hey, we already did that, and guess what? If you do that, that data may work out early on for you, but it's gonna, not work out for you longer term because you're not gonna be able to raise your prices again, you're gonna crush your margins. So, I find myself a little bit of an investigator, looking at data, looking at high-level data, micro data, looking at historical data and future data to try to make the best decision I can. And I'd say it's very difficult. The amount of companies struggling in cannabis, it's not because the data is, clear and we know exactly what to do. I think that cannabis is unique in the sense that it has the recreational side and it has the medical and wellness side. And when you combine all that in a new industry, it can be very, very challenging. Personally, I like to look at the CPG industry. I think there's a whole host of data there. I like to look at the whole US and really drill down, how did we get here? And to me, the most fascinating data is that, America is sick. A lot of cannabis was legalized through the medical program. It is there to help us heal. And I think that you're seeing consumers continuously trade off of whether it's alcohol or harmful ingredients in certain CPG products for healthier products. And so to me, that is a trend that Pantry is very aligned with. And early on, you may not see that in the early cannabis data. You may just see data that people want the lowest price for the highest THC. And we've also cross-referenced that data with where we are as an economy. If people are paying more for groceries and insurance, there's going to be a flock to value versus premium and pricing. And so all of this is painting a picture in our head to just try to understand this market as best we can to make the best decisions we can.
To guess in one of the points that you were making, I think that something that my clients are most frustrated about is the lack of data that's in the industry. And so they're constantly trying to figure out ways to get that signal. There's a lack of great coefficients, there's a lack of great data. And so they need some navigation to understand what data points exist and what you can derive from those data points. And it's not always so obvious, and that's because of the regulations that step in. You see a lot of people come from outside of the industry with marketing, they open up their bag of tricks, they take 4 or 5 things out, and it's like, none of those work. That's illegal, that's prohibited, that's gonna get you in trouble. And they go, okay, thank you, and they put all the things back in the bag, close the bag, and walk out. And that's their experience, they know what to do. With data and marketing in cannabis, you have to be guerrilla mindset. You have to figure out what the rules are, and then figure out how to navigate around them, while one, not running up against a regulation, but then also, if you can't just gut those decisions. You have to find some sort of data to frame those decisions that you're making, even when you know there's a whole bunch of data that's not out there. And so that's the challenge with it, but it's also what, in a sense, shapes it. What do you fill it in with? Like, we all remember Jurassic Park, they filled in frog DNA for the dinosaur DNA in the movie, right? What is your frog DNA in cannabis? What are you picking from? Is frog really the right thing, or maybe you should use a bird, right? Like, that's part of how the synthesization of the data comes in when you have a lot of lack of data.
You make a great point. One of the coolest things about this industry right now is the people that are expert in the field, in fields like marketing and everything else, is their playbook doesn't work here. So you get people where you're on an even playing field. And this is for the people that are not in the industry trying to break in or looking to move up in the industry, is nobody else knows how to do it either. Mm-hmm. So if you can figure it out before them, if you can look at that data and figure out not only what insights you get from it, but take action, you're able to put that data into action. And if you're someone who can get an incomplete data set and kind of use your mind or use context to fill in those gaps, you're already at an advantage, and you guys could be up here on this stage having this conversation as opposed to somebody who came from Fruit of the Loom or Outback. So, that's one of the greatest things about this industry. It's funny, everyone thinks it's all about going out on the patio and smoking joints, but you'd be surprised how much we do with Excel and pivot tables.
It's half about going on the patio and smoking.
Well, you're usually smoking a joint while you're doing the pivot table.
Pivot table, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the only way to pivot.
So I guess, Todd, just like doubling down on that, you know, you being a
I got to
market
back up
manager.
my point now?
Huh?
I wasn't planning on backing up my point.
No, no. Well, I'm going to ask you to anyway. So, as a market manager in Florida, you know, this is a highly diverse state. North Florida looks nothing like South Beach. Might as well be two completely different states. So, when you get these data points or data sets or what have you, how do you use and utilize these data points in a local market strategy, being that Florida is so diverse?
Sure.
How do you refine that?
So it's interesting with us because we are a premium flower brand, and flower can kind of be looked at as a commodity, right? So how do you differentiate? And you know, we've got phenomenal genetics, but every single the reason we have so many is because not everything is for everyone, right? So we have to look at Florida kind of by different geographies. So like, you know, when we come out with new strains, or even the strains that have been in existence, we have to see where those perform well and the type of strains that do well in that area, or just how that particular area buys. Like, you know, especially in, I don't want to say an uneducated market like Florida, because it's not uneducated, but we'll call it a newer market with newer education, to where, you know, THC is still one of the leading drivers in decision making, but that's not across the board. There are pockets of the area in Florida that are a little bit more educated on the components of cannabis, and I don't know that by looking at the data, but I can see, oh, our higher THC strains sell better in these areas, or the higher terps sell better in these areas, or just crazy enough, for some reason the sherbet strains sell very well in the Panhandle, right? So that's really what we're looking at, because within Trulieve, and you know, we're in 152 doors across the state, everywhere from, you know, a place like Brooksville, which shockingly is my number 4 store, to Fort Lauderdale, which is number 1. All right, you guys love some Connected and Alien Labs out there for sure. You know, we've got to know where to send it, because otherwise it's going to sit, it's going to move, and it's going to age out, and quality does not equate to age. So, you know, with those data sets, it's really like building Florida not into just this one market that we can put a silver bullet into, but breaking it into its components and understanding how we should distribute and best get our sell-through with the product, and understanding who our competitors are in that area. Like, you know, I'm going on a little bit of a rant here, but we work with Trulieve. Most of the people who love our brand outside of this state also love Preferred. They also love Doja. They also love Wizard Trees. Who has those customers? The Flowery. So we know when we're in the Flowery, we've got to do a little bit harder marketing who we are and what we do, to make sure that our customers know where we are and where to find us. So, you know, that's what the data tells us, and it's every data set that we can get our hands on, and they're not always complete. But without that job, I'm basically throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. Or sorry, without those data sets.
To guess on one of your points when we launched Ease.
I had some?
Yeah, you did. There was like 2. To yes and one of those points, when we launched Ease in San Francisco, which was the first place it really got going, we built the SOPs and got it running in San Francisco, San Jose, and then we brought it to LA. We found new partners for them. After a year of data of sales, we looked at it, and there was actually a distinction in California. Northern California smoked sativas. Southern California smoked indicas. And it was clear as day. But what's also interesting is they all ordered at the same time. That didn't change, whether what they wanted to smoke. They all ordered it on Saturday morning at around 10 o'clock. I wonder why. But that's when we saw the most traffic kind of go out. And so you can get these, you start in data in cannabis, there's not a lot, but there's starting to be little signals of use preference, because you can't go and sit in a person's house and figure out what they're smoking at that time, but you can start to see trends in the area, in the macro area, and how that is, how the individual users are making that happen.
Well, Scott, you know, I kind of also wanted to pivot to you. You know, you also have experience in the West Coast markets, and Pantry's a unique company in the sense that, you know, you're combining food innovation with cannabis. So having that in mind with the wellness, I guess, outward appearance and ethos, how are you taking all of those concepts and branding your products to your consumer utilizing data? So what data points are specific to you, being that you have a wellness ethos for Pantry?
Yeah, I'd say that we always look at the consumer and back in. And so, we talk a different language than a lot of people in cannabis that are talking strain names and various different form factors. We are really, trying to find the people within the community that are hurting, from pain or sleep. And there's a lot of that data out there. There's a lot of community groups and businesses that focus on that. And so we were, misguided initially, right? When we sold to the cannabis consumer, and we were providing a healthier, more quality experience, focused on a, major ailment, they'll buy it, but they weren't your core consumer, right? They weren't coming back. They weren't hitting that repeat purchase cycle. And so that led us to dig a little bit deeper, and we actually, because it was such a dark data room, we wanted to turn on some lights, and we started putting some secret shoppers in stores, and we started getting some feedback from the ground floor on what's really going on. What is that conversation happening between the bud tender and the consumer or the customer? And we found that, through the transition from the medical to rec market, there was an acceleration of velocity in stores. There was a little bit less, maybe, let's be honest, this whole industry and every business is beholden to their balance sheet. And people do want velocity through these stores. Medical patients and wellness patients do take a little bit longer. And so we started to identify these people in stores, and we would ask them outside, what's going on? And we started to get insights that, they felt the medical program was a lot better. They felt it was a lot slower and a lot more hands-on. And they felt the move towards this high THC kind of push was not necessarily making them feel safe. And I think that's really what made me do a deep dive on the word trust. Trust is a phenomenal word in our society because it's how we build a relationship person to person or brand to person or community. And there's been a lot of mistrust in society. And again, you go back to the food, to our food or pharmaceuticals, like, parents were fighting for their children to get access to medical cannabis because they felt they didn't trust the medical system anymore. They didn't feel like they were getting the best care for their kids. And so we started to really learn about, the trust issues in cannabis, both from the people that have high stigma, we're told it's devil's lettuce, to the people that, don't believe that, but are feeling trust issues at the dispensary level. And so we really just started to look at the business through their eyes. And that's what inspired us to go a little bit more direct to consumer. A lot of times we were focused on, how do we cater to our business, our customers, which were our dispensaries. However, when we started focusing on really engaging with the end customer, it was a much different conversation, right? They were very appreciative. They were very happy. Some of them would share that they had allergy problems or dietetic problems, or that, our sleep product was the best thing in the world that really helped them. And that was a completely different conversation than, nobody wants low dose edibles. Nobody wants, no processed, no refined sugar edibles. And I said, I know a lot of diabetics. I know a lot of people that can't have this sugar. And so always going back to the consumer, looking at your core consumer, looking at the data from their eyes, and then trying to match it with the data that you're seeing in the industry, and both from a broader macro standpoint in the US, I think it's just helped us turn on a couple lights, see a little bit more clearly, and it was really validating for us. We were very steadfast in that, we don't want to be a 99-cent, corn syrup, THC, product. We don't want to be that. And that was the data we were getting from dispensaries. Well, that's what sells, corn syrup, THC, low price, boom. And we said, we don't believe that. Our surveys, our customers, what we've done, the community we've built. And so by us going more direct to consumer, the data set really changed for us. It started validating a lot more for us. And we've learned that those people are a lot more loyal. They're less price sensitive. They're a lot more loyal. They're looking for that help. And the messages have been very heartwarming because we're improving people's lives.
You can call me nobody because I like them. You make a good point though. Like, there is a lot of data out there. There's a lot of great data companies, Pistol, New Frontier, all of them, and you know they have the same data sets that everybody's taking action on. And he makes a great point about starting to build your own data sets. It's something we do out in California where we have a little bit more freedom, where we put out, you know, a pheno box that has 4 different crosses in it with a QR code on the lid of each one, and we gather the feedback from our consumer to which one of those crosses they like the best. You know, we did a Jack Herrera pheno box in California called the Jack Box, and we took advantage Jack of Hearts, Jack of Clubs, Jack of Diamonds, Jack of Spades, Jack crossed with 4 different of our strains, and we let the community pick which one they want. But you as someone who builds a brand, the most important thing you can do, especially in a legal cannabis market, is get to the stores, talk to the bud tenders, and talk to your patients or consumers or whatever it is. No matter how high up you are in the company, you are never, ever above it. If you do not go into the stores, you will fail 10 times out of 10.
That's extremely true.
Yeah.
I want everyone to really. Oh, I lost my microphone.
I've started with Connected in February. I've been to 140 True Leaf stores, and I've gotten more information by going to stores than I have through any piece of information that True Leaf has given me or anything else. And you get it from the street, and you can take action on that. So as a company, you can't just trust, you can't take the lazy approach and sit in your office and trust the data that's fed to you. You have to go out and build your own data sets, and you have to do it yourself sometimes.
Yeah, please go to the dispensaries, stand in the stores, listen to why people are there. All these companies, Pistol, New Frontier, they'll come up with 14 archetypes of all these different people.
It's all POS data.
Yeah, no, you can just go stand in the store. You'll find that there's about 4 different types of shoppers, and they're not archetypes. You're not like a person on the back of a card. You're motivated by something to go in there. So figure out the motivations. I spent 6 years at a dispensary, and when I got to PAX, we hired Boston Consulting to do like $1 million survey. We surveyed 3,000 people, and all of the conclusions was exactly what I wrote down because I worked at a dispensary for 6 years. I knew all the information. They spent $1.2 million finding out what they could have done if they just spent 2 weeks talking to bud tenders.
And you would have bought a bunch of weed too,
and I
so you'd
bought,
have the weed to share.
I probably could have made them $2.4 million if they just let me buy weed with it. But anyways, that's a different story.
Yep.
Well, Josh, you know, your experience working with large, you know, known brands such as PAX and other companies as well, you know, do you see a difference for when you're launching an initial product and, you know, how that's getting marketed versus an ongoing product that you need to refine based on the data that you've been receiving? Or how does your experience work with that, and what could you share in terms of individuals here who either have their own product and looking to refine or starting to develop their own product?
So I think the most interesting thing we did at PAX with the Era product was because we put NFC chips on it and we were able to track and maintain data, we actually discovered what the use case, like what temperatures people were using, how long people took puffs for. Yeah, so we had all this back-end data. We hired all these cool data scientists to sit down with us and go through it. We found the average puff was 2.2 seconds, that most people use the 3rd heat setting. We started actually getting like use data, and it was really interesting to crack it open and see for the first time how are people using it. And then we did sort of like the Spotify rap thing. We did the PAX, I don't even know what we called it. That probably isn't good marketing.
These are your puffs for the year.
Yeah, and we said, hey, the PAX community, you guys smoked 4 acres of cannabis. And you know, and we were able to quantize it in these really cool ways. So we were able to use quant data from use to explain other quant data of in a bigger sense. So they're able to sort of see how their use fits in the picture of the community. That's a cool thing that later we were able to take the data and put it back to the consumers and say, this is what you use, this is what you experience. I think that was cool for everyone, both us from the company side as well as the consumers. Outside of that, I think a lot of the data that you're talking to, if you're not bringing in those pieces when you're writing the product requirements document, and you're not transmitting those product requirement documents to your marketing team, then what you're doing is you're making a lot of little adjustments at the very end, and it's usually around performance, blog SEO based, or maybe affiliate based, influencer based things, where they're sort of covering the insights that you learned. You're saying, hey, position it this way, market it this way. We found that this thing is compelling. And that's coming from the product side. There's a lot of things that product developers say, oh, everyone's going to love this feature. Oh, they're going to need this. And then you give it to them like, what's this? What I really like is the cover, or what I really like is this one thing that that you thought was really small. And so you have to be able to set up the right funnel so you can get that data. And it's not all quant data, it's all sorts of data, and bring it back so that your marketers can then reposition and refocus those attributes.
I think with that, you're 100% right. Like, there's an authenticity to it where data can be counterproductive, to where it can get you to change your mind on things that you're pretty sure of. Like, I think Pantry worked because Scott passionate about it. It was what he loved. It was something he almost built for himself, right? Like, there's an authenticity there that you see, especially when he talks and you talk to him. You know, the products that you bring to market work, but you can tell the way that you talk about it. Connected works because of Connected and Alien Labs, because of Caleb and Ted and their authenticity, right? So, like, the data is very important in helping you make your decisions, but I would say, and people can disagree with me, don't let the data make the decisions for you. Like, I think there's a lot of times where, you know, especially if it's an entrepreneur or somebody in this industry, if you built a device or if you came out with a product, you probably did it for a certain need that you may have had, and don't let the data distract you from that. Because, if, you know, part of the reason that I believe that I'm good at what I do is because I was a consumer in this market first. And a lot of the decisions I make are just things that I would have liked to see as a consumer. And now, do I represent everybody in this consumer base? No, but I think there's a lot of averages that I have that the average consumer has as well too, and there are certain attributes that I can do that with. So on the other hand, like, data can be your best friend, but it can also be your worst enemy. So you have to understand when, as a business person or an entrepreneur, to kind of trust your gut over the data. Because if we could all get successful by following data, we'd all be successful.
Yeah, I think to your point, a lot of data is, you know, backwards looking, right? So that gut feeling that you're in the store and that you're analyzing that data through your own brain, it can give you that intuition to try to get an edge. And I don't think either one is right or wrong. I think it's about, you know, embracing both of them and seeing, you know, how they net out in your head to develop your strategy. And then, Josh, I didn't know that about the device. That's super cool.
We made sure it was disclosed.
I forgot. I completely forgot about it. I forgot how cool PAX was. Now I'm sad it's not.
I know.
But if I can dream for a minute, like, I think we're going to get a lot more data back on consumers in cannabis. You know, I wear a wearable. I've been all over Whoop to understand how does, you know, our sleep product affect sleep. You know, I'd like to know how cannabis is affecting Apple Watches and your stress levels.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think there's a lot of data we're going to get around cannabis that's going to be really, really cool and nerdy, and I'm here for it.
See, that would be my problem. If it was my product and it was a sleep product and I was wearing the Apple Watch or the Whoop to see how I slept, I'd be too excited to find out in the morning to sleep. So it'd be completely counterintuitive.
Well, you know, you touched on a great point, and I kind of want to pose it to all of you guys. You know, we're talking about looking backwards, but let's take a moment and try to look forwards. What do you guys see are the emerging trends in data and how it could be used in cannabis? And let's say for the next 3 to 5 years, what do you see happening in data and cannabis?
Synthetic data from AI that creates lookalike campaigns that create humans that may or may not exist to market to. And if you don't control the bot, you're going to be marketing to someone that doesn't actually exist. So where you sort of attenuate, like how you can attenuate back some of that projecting is, I think, is going to be the key to utilizing AI synthetic data on motivation consumer pieces.
Interesting. And then, you know, could you kind of dive into, I guess, what you're doing? Because I know you and I kind of briefly spoke about, you know, your aggregation of data and your whole, I guess, plan and concept with that.
Yeah, I think that we're getting to a point where data is not going to be so freely shared anymore. You know, the Mayo Clinic isn't going to be so kind to just turn over their data to Facebook or Google and say, hey, train your AI and put us out of business. So you're starting to see those guardrails get put up. And, you know, Todd and I had a chat about that a little bit with, you know, why is maybe Trulieve not sharing as much as they should, or why doesn't our dispensary partners in California share as much as they should? And, you know, there's the Cambridge Analytica scandal with Facebook years ago. If you watch the documentary, you know, I think it was at that time they coined data is the gold, right? Is the new gold, or is the new oil. And as Josh is pointing out, you know, if you don't have this data, you're not going to be able to train your model, right? So if you look at it as, you know, what comes first, you know, you can have the best engineers and the best model, but if you don't have the best data, You know, it's like having the best brain, but you never grew up. You never got that further education. And so, you know, I've been very early on trends, but I don't think I've been wrong, and certain trends take a while to pan out. But I think having first-party consumer data, especially around medical and wellness data around cannabis consumers, is going to be enormously valuable. And we have been frustrated, and we've voiced this with our dispensary partners, that we're not getting enough data. And so we really started going direct to consumer. We think of metadata, we think of, you know, first-party data, we think of just give me all the data as possible, and I will make sense of it on the back end. And, you know, data is also a moat. You cannot catch up to somebody that's been doing physics or math 5 years, you know, before you. So the sooner you start collecting data, the more valuable it's going to get over time, and you're going to have that moat, because somebody that's going to come into the market, which we all experience, people come in with bigger money, more executives, and they're ready to, you know, take market share from you. If you have a better data set, that's going to help, you know, defend you from competition coming in. And just one last point, which I've talked about a little bit here today, is like, you know, there's a lot of lack of trust with our healthcare system and our pharmaceutical system. And I think consumers are more willing to give their data to Whoop or Apple or maybe a cannabis company and say, hey, they're maybe not doing the best with my data. It's all buttoned up with HIPAA. I want to give you my data, and I want to see if you can help me. And where I want to take that is, yeah, the marketing campaigns are going to be fantastic, and I think they should be more targeted and timely, and AI is going to do that. But we can get down to custom formulations. And, you know, Pantry does have a vision to have consumers upload their blood panel data, and we are cross-referencing that with the vast cannabinoids in the plant as we learn more about the plant, and coming up with custom formulations that may not be one-to-one, but they could be a little bit more group-specific, as all of us are different, to get a little bit more customized. We're probably, you know, years away from this happening, but if you don't have the idea today and you don't start collecting the data today, it will be probably too late for you later on, as people will be ahead of you in this race.
I mean, I think everybody is looking for the silver bullet of consumer data in the way that people consume, how often they consume, what they consume, and everything else. And they're looking for it outside of the information that they have of their own customers. And there are a lot of companies that are popping up that are similar to the PAX app, where the difference is they're not just connected to what you're doing. It's where they are looking for people to voluntarily enter their consumption information and then aggregate it that way and make suggestions to you and everything else. And I think the problem with that is it's so far off, because, and I hate to even be this cynic, but like, you know, you go on a website and you see reviews for a product and you're like, man, people don't like this. And it's like, wait a second, I've never left a review in my life. Who are these people that are leaving reviews, right? So like, as much as there's a company called Jointly, and I love the founder and they do a great job, and as much as I would like to enter every single smoking session I have into Jointly and help them out, I don't have the time. I don't think about it. So all of a sudden, if they blow up, you have to consider, like, wait, who's actually using this? And it equates to, like, also some of these cannabis studies and this medicinal stuff we're seeing, when it's like, you know, when they say cannabis consumers are more likely to have this really bad trait, it's like, wait, no, those are just the people that are willing to admit their cannabis use in public at that time, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of us that were like, yeah, I'm not going to talk about that yet. So I'm interested to see the future of the data. Like, when you say, what do you think the future is? I don't know. I'm hoping it's clean data. I'm hoping it's correct data. But we come from an industry where people are very used to not talking about what they do. And it's starting to turn around. Like, you guys saw Caleb up here yesterday, who's our CEO and our founder. He comes from the legacy industry. Like, the dude did not do very many interviews until recently, right? And now we're starting to hear his story, and there's a lot of people like that. So I'm very curious to see when, like, a lot of these legacy guys like Caleb and Dave and Doja, and they come in and, like, they're not just Wall Street people that are going to do a random survey of a grouping of people, and like that information that we get. And I know I'm kind of rambling there, but I just feel like a lot of the information that's out there is very anecdotal. It's not clean, and you're taking action on it, and it may not be the right action. So I don't know what the future of data is. I think the future of data is companies being their own data collection and making actions off the things that they know that they control, and just ignoring the rest. At the end of the day, like, this is data-driven brand building, right? The data-driven part is only part of the equation. You still have to build a brand. There still has to be authenticity, and you still have to understand who you built that brand for. You don't build a brand and then find out who it's for. You know your audience, and you build a brand for them.
I would add one thing. It is true. People with their, cannabis consumption aren't as forthcoming, right, or transparent from where this industry's come from. And I think you also notice that about, people's health. At least in my family, what I've seen is, sickness is a weakness, and people don't always like to share that. And I think that hopefully younger generations here are starting to say, hey, let me share how cannabis helps me. It could help you. And let me share what's going on with my medical history because it could help you. I will not repeat it, but a lady yesterday stood up and shared some very personal information. And, that I think it is enlightened me, which I'm going to go on and share. And so, we have to, I'm sure. I'm all for the data and understanding it and us sharing this personal experience. And it goes back to that word trust, right? Are we comfortable to share our journey and our experience? Is somebody going to judge us for this? And it is so freaking weird that, even today, when my neighbor pops over and he's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't tell him anything about cannabis. And it's like, even today, I still have that stigma of the cops, rolling up in New York and like thinking it's a dirty thing. And so I think we got a long ways to go on this, but that was a rant just about, how people are hiding their health data along with their cannabis data, and by sharing it more transparently, we can see a little bit clearer.
No, well said. I think we got 10 minutes left, so I kind of want to turn it over to you guys, the audience. I've seen a few hands while we were discussing, so I thought I saw a hand over here. Yes? Question?
So there was mention of guerrilla marketing, and I was just kind of wondering from the group, what's your favorite guerrilla marketing activation that you've done in a different space that you think will be impactful here in Florida? And then I have another question after that.
I don't have any other spaces. I've been
Same.
in the industry since I was a young adult. So my favorite activation I ever did was after we launched Ease, about 6 months later, that we were making too much money, so they pulled the business back. So we had to partner to launch our own delivery. So we made a bunch of coasters, and the rules were you couldn't advertise in anywhere that someone under 21 could see it. So that made it only bars. So I printed a bunch of coasters, printed our license information, all the things. We did a really thing, and we gave it out to every bar in San Francisco. And we did that week after week after week. And the people putting out the coasters, they only would last like an hour or two because everyone would give them a free drink, and then we'd have to go pick them up with a bunch of coasters when they're drunk. But we got them to all the places, and we were able to sustain that delivery volume because we were doing a very non-traditional guerrilla type of marketing.
I don't have any experience outside of cannabis doing this stuff. I like anything that has a PR angle to it. I made this phrase up a long time ago, altruistic capitalism, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with making the world a better place and making a little money on it at the same time, because the money motivates you to continue to do good. So, with things like, community involvement and things like that, I think it's important for anybody who's cannabis to get involved in the community, do 5Ks for causes, beach cleanups, hurricane relief, things like that, to show like, hey, we're normal people just like you. We help the community. We're not a bunch of lazy stoners. We're not criminals and all that. So when it comes to guerrilla marketing, I like the news eats up a cannabis company doing positive in the community. And candidly, not only do you get to do something that's beneficial, that's going to make you feel good, that's good for the community, but then your company's going to get a bunch of press associated with it too. Yeah. And that's just free advertisement that you're not going to get anywhere else. So, when I do stuff, there might be stuff that doesn't cost us anything, or maybe it costs us a donation, but we're going to get advertising out of it as well too. And, sometimes I feel like a scumbag when I think that way, but, we wouldn't be doing it otherwise. So, I only have so much time, so if I can get those volunteer hours in while I'm on the clock, it benefits me.
Gotta make a buck.
It's the most efficient man in cannabis.
Definitely not.
I think a lot about guerrilla marketing because lost my Instagram a couple times. And
we just lost both of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we could spend a long hour on, that frustration. But it made me start, thinking creatively, like where can we hit the ground and get new consumers in? And I'll tell you, after doing Hall of Flowers and a lot of cannabis events, I was saying that that's not, the best return for us. So we started looking at run clubs. We started looking at nursing homes. We started looking at, gyms. We started looking at, where was the pain the highest, where there would be the most acceptance, right? When I went to city council in, Manhattan Beach, south of LA, they hate, they're like, oh no, booze, screw cannabis, right? So it's like, you have to go where you think there's gonna be receptivity. I think a positive angle to it always helps, right? I'll never forget when we were working with a nursing home and people were, trying cannabis over Xanax, you'd see some dancing, right? Mm-hmm. And that story wasn't written about, but it was a, heartfelt story. And so if you look, just real quick, if you look at big businesses, whether it's Amazon, DoorDash, like they're doing partnerships to drive traffic to each other. Investors do this all the time. And when I look at local communities, all these businesses, could use a little bit more revenue and we could use a little bit more customers. And so there's this symbiotic relationship there to go to your local community. It could be a hair salon or it could be a gym.
We do, the donut store.
The donut store, it could be any of those, right? It's just saying,
opposite of your wellness approach, but
they're still tasty. I like donut. When you articulate to them that one of the highest revenue items that you can do is advertising revenue to a business that's around you, you're saying, hey, look, this is 100 marketing dollars or advertising dollars that can go to your bottom line, and all you're doing is promoting a good thing. And, again, the stigma's there, but if you find the people that are on board with that, the receptivity's there, and it can be a great, guerrilla marketing customer acquisition.
I actually think that content is the new guerrilla marketing, right? So you asked about experiences in the past. Not brand building, but for my personal brand, I did 250 hours, 250 episodes of a podcast to build my personal brand in this industry. And I would not be sitting on this stage if it was not for that. I didn't make a single red cent off that podcast. There's no advertising, there's nothing. It was just me putting in the work and getting it out there. And we do content. We're a founder-led company. Both of our founders do content, and the videos that they put out on their own personal Instagram pages do more for our company than half the stuff we spend money on, right? Ted or Caleb just popping up on their phone talking about something cool or something that's going on, new products. Those are the things that go viral for us. So, you at Goldflower, you guys have a lot of celebrity-led brands. Like, get those, I almost used the bad words, get those people on camera and get them talking. Like, that's gonna be better than anything else. Yeah, I tried to.
What were you gonna say?
Feedback. My other question was specifically for you, Todd. You mentioned that there's sometimes when the data is pointing you in one direction and you have to go with your gut and make a different decision. Do you have a specific situation where you had to make that kind of decision, and what was the outcome?
Oh God, I didn't know I was gonna be put on the spot. I made it up. I wasn't being serious. No, we're doing it right now, to be honest. And you guys can help me with this. So we have a strain called Permanent Marker. It's not ours. We own the parent of it, Biscotti, and it's #1 in California. It's crushing it, and it's not doing as well here because it's testing at 23%. It's not testing high, so people aren't buying it. But whenever I push somebody to try it, they absolutely love it. They're hooked. So looking at my sales data, looking at the THC testing, everything's telling me to either scale back or kill Permanent Marker in the state of Florida. And I just know, I just got to get more people to try it. So candidly, we're leaning in the other way. And instead of scaling it back, I've increased production, and I'm giving out 2,200 samples to the Trulieve dispensary associates. Got to get a job at Trulieve, unfortunately. And we're giving it to everybody for free so they can experience it. And then, because we've seen that with a lot of strains that we allow them to sample, that they fall in love with it. And unfortunately, within THC-driven state, when you have a strain, and if you guys go to a Return of the Alien, Ted Leidy's Instagram from Alien Labs, in California, we have a strain called Sangria that's testing around 23. That seems to be the magical, terrible number. And Ted filmed a video, came on and said, guys, if you trust me and you trust my opinion, I'm telling you this is fire. It's only testing at 23%. You got to try it. So a lot of times when we look at the attributes of certain strains and everything, but you try it and you're like, there's something about this, we just got to get it in people's hands. So I would say that's my number one, where it's trust your gut.
I'll take you, and then you, and then you, and then I think we're done. So.
Hi guys, my name's Oliver. Thank you for a great panel. I think the emerging hemp industry is obviously controversial, but getting a little bit too big to ignore for a lot of brands. And you know, in that industry lies a whole trove of data that was previously inaccessible to many brands. I mean, you have ad revenue being spent, direct-to-consumer consumption, subscription campaigns.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're in this new phase of the industry where perhaps we're discovering what the future of the cannabis consumer looks like, or what they're buying? You're seeing a lot of low-dose products being sold, namely beverages. In 1906, you know, Peter Barcelona in an interview said that they were pivoting more toward D2C and focusing on low-dose. Do you think that the future of cannabis might be a more low-dose option, and the inaccessibility for consumers to reach those patients, you know, through traditional dispensary shopping avenues, or is the stigma associated with going to a dispensary has deterred a lot of consumers to purchasing it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that. The product side, I would leave that aside. I would say that there's, you know, definitely different products for different consumers, right? There's some people that are high consumers. There's some people that love low dose, and I think there's going to be a market for all of them. Size of those markets, you know, to be determined or see, you know. I think on the structure and the regulation, you know, if you're looking at $1 and you're looking at an ROI standpoint, you're getting more reach, less restrictions, less regulation, less taxes. And so it's very hard. And this is coming from somebody for, you know, for 5.5 years, I was like, dude, forget the hemp market. They're going to screw over consumers because it's not regulated. I'm very consumer focused, and like, I don't want to see more crap sold, right? However, it is too big to ignore. And I think every CEO is saying, okay, I have to answer to my balance sheet. And if I'm going to spend $1 in a legal market or in the hemp market, which one's going to go further? And I think Peter's saying it, I think a lot of people are saying it, but I think it's a reality that is hard to come to, and it was hard to come to for me. And it's, you know, one of those things where the teacher will appear when the student's ready. Some people may go down with the ship. I try to triple down in California, and California's still trying to find its bottom, trying to find its groove. Meanwhile, the hemp industry is growing rapidly and has less restrictions, so it's very attractive. And on the product side, I would say we're going to see an explosion, you know, from men and women personal wellness to very high dose to drinks to all kinds of things, which is exciting.
I think we had a question here.
Some of you guys all touched on is you're kind of being boots on the ground in the retail stores, interacting with consumers, watching how they shop, and you know, a lot of that, you know, data you're taking there doesn't necessarily have hard data to back it up. So how do you take more of that kind of anecdotal data and present it and get executives and investors that are sometimes more data driven, not always from the cannabis industry, on board with, you know, those action items that you're taking from those experiences?
Bring them with you. Seriously, bring them with you. So our example, you like those, our CEO was talking about certain things that he wanted to do in Florida in the audience and everything else, and I said, come sit with me in a Trulieve for 3 hours and look at who goes in there, and then tell me how they compare to the same people that come buy our product in California. And by him going there, like, sometimes they just won't understand. You know, in a weird way, like, if you build the trust and you've proven yourself time and time again, like, they'll automatically start listening to you, in theory, right? But that doesn't always work. Sometimes you gotta be like, listen, man, I've been in stores, this is what I'm getting, and you've gotta take a video of it, you've gotta get some content around it, or you gotta bring them with you. Like, it has to be seen for some people to believe it, especially people that are super data driven. And I'll be honest, you know, if you're not the leader or the decision maker and you have a gut instinct and you know it's right, but the data's saying otherwise, you're not always gonna win that battle. You might lose a lot more than you care to think, and that's unfortunate, but sometimes that's company culture, sometimes it's not. So, you know, here's the thing in business, you don't win every battle as much as you want to. So like, I wish I can tell you there's a silver bullet for it. You got to bring them, you got to show them, you might still lose.
I think we had one more question back there.
Yeah, Todd, you had touched on this a little bit earlier, but like, what specific data-driven insights have you got from Florida that like would help brands really affect their marketing, like specifically for the market?
I think that most brands do an absolutely terrible job marketing in general, and specifically in Florida, because it's really hard, so a lot of brands don't. If you look at a lot of brands, early on in my career I worked at Springbank, and one of the jobs was we would send text messages, and we were sending images as text messages, and every single brand sent the same similar images, a picture of a pre-roll, a picture of their packaging, this, that, and the other. Just, you know, you can't, if you have premium flower or the best stuff, it's gonna shine through, but who is your audience? What are they doing with their product? How are they using their product? Who are they with? What are they, people are not doing this, you know, like lifestyle marketing or just really brand building and building an audience that's gonna have an affinity for their brand. You know, in cannabis, there are a lot of legacy folks, one of them being in the back of the room here, that have built a reputation, and they're able to build their brand on that because they've had a reputation for being quality for so long, and they're getting that recognition now, and they've built like this, almost like Elon Musk, where it's a founder-led brand where you just really respect and appreciate the founder and the craftsmanship, almost like an artist at the head of the company. And those brands are doing a really good job telling their brand story and telling their founder's story. But a lot of these brands that aren't founder-led and weren't, you know, founded by an entrepreneur or someone who's super passionate, that are, you know, manufactured brands or celebrity brands and things like that, they do a terrible job at telling their story. And it's just like, we've got great weed, our guy knows weed, but he doesn't give the how or the why or the backstory, and you can't relate to it, and you just don't care. So to your point, you know, what data-driven insights do I have? I mean, I look at it, I'm a consumer in this industry. I buy a lot of weed in the state of Florida from everybody, and I just think a lot of companies do not do a very good job at marketing to their audience, and I don't think they're picking their audience or identifying their audience either. I think they're trying to boil the ocean and sell as much as they can to everybody, because when this market was legalized here in Florida specifically, I don't know if you guys remember when smokable flower first got passed, you would show up to the dispensary at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and there'd be a sign that said, sorry, flower is sold out. Well, at some point, supply caught up with demand. And now, if you look, people are sitting on a ton of flower, it's aging out, and you can buy it for pennies on the dollar. So, to your point, I think most people in the state of Florida do not do a good job marketing.
And I think he said it. I think the founder-led storytelling is huge right now. I think if you're out there building and being transparent, that is, you know, it's catching my attention, it's catching his, and it's working.
If you're not a founder-led brand, though, you got to go back to like your basics. You know, you got to go back to the rudiments, and not everyone's going to have a founder-led brand. A lot of the celebrity brands don't work. Some of them really do work. So if you're in a company where you don't have a founder-led brand, you do have to start to get the data. And one of the themes is get the data yourself. One, don't assume who's going to buy it. Put probes out there, figure out ways to get signal, and then understand what that signal's saying. I've worked with performance marketing things where, oh, we're gonna target vapors 21 to 35, and the first 20 purchases are all over 65. And so you cannot assume who's gonna buy your product. You need to first cast a wide net of diverse bunch of signal, then start to look at what that is telling you, and then you can start to understand who already gets it, who gets it inherently. I don't really need to communicate much to them. I just need to keep on pulling them back so they don't go anywhere else. Who isn't getting it, and then try to discover what the gap is there and communicate it. To your point though, no one in Florida is really marketing that well right now. If you go look at any dispensary's menu, it looks like they're going out of business. You know, a solid marketing plan isn't 50% off forever. You need, and to speak to the aging thing, hold on, to speak to your aging point here, you can sell the fresh stuff, which is what they do with Connected in California. The fresh drop would come to Spark, we'd have a line, people want to grab it. It's fresh. We do not, even though Florida is known for fresh and citrus and all this great stuff, we don't market fresh here. We market THC, which is a terrible coefficient, and I wish we'd invest a little bit more in some other coefficients, and it wouldn't be that hard, but it's one that needs to be done.
There's some electronic stores that have been going in New York that have been going out of business for about 2-3 decades. So I don't know about that.
Thinking of Zohan right
Yes.
now. So yeah, but that's get your own data. Don't assume you know who's going to buy it. Get your own data, and then start to refine that data get. But you have to create better coefficients than what exists. We're always going to only sell the highest THC until we explain to someone that this smells better than this.
Yeah.
And we don't. And if you think, like, we know the jalapenos, spicy stuff. There's this whole rating to how we do spices. Do you know that wasn't made on a computer? Someone just started cracking spices and saying, how much milk do you need to make it so you don't cry? And then they were able to, the Scoville thing, and they were able to start to say, all right, this is more intense than this. No one in cannabis has taken the time to just put a bunch of cannabis in jars, put dryer sheets over it, and this is 1 sheet, 2 sheet, 3 sheets, 4 sheets. All right, this is a 4-sheet strain. It takes 4 dryer sheets to kill the smell. So we haven't done the work, like the scientific data collection work, to actually make better coefficients in the industry. You could even do this for silly stuff, and big companies like Trulieve or whatnot should probably invest in something like this. I could go put all of you, I could get you all stoned on one strain of weed, play a movie and count how many times you laugh. I could go put another group in here and do the same thing, different strains. Now all of a sudden, yeah, this does sound fun. Now all of a sudden,
Next year's conference.
I can say this weed makes you laugh. We've tested against Caddyshack, and it makes you laugh 50% more than this weed. And then I can look at what's inside of that. What are the ratios of terpenes? What is the strength of THC? And I could say, hey, look, based off of these characteristics that we've observed, and these characteristics are inherent that we can find, we think that these strains are going to perform this way. If all the R&D is so important, all the cultivation is so important, no one's investing in a way to understand the signal over just high THC and how much they buy. And the founders, the real ones, the legacy folks, we know that it's more than THC. I used to grow this Exodus cheese. It tested at 16%. That's before we took all the moisture out. So at 9% moisture, it tested 16%. That'd be like a 23% now. Those things would get you more stoned than the 23.5% Cherry AK that was testing that we sold for 65 bucks an eighth. But everyone in the know would smoke the cheese and just be like, that is, we couldn't hold on to it, even though it was low testing. But we were able to create that trust with the people, and they knew that they could buy that. So better coefficients, better marketing.
Well, I appreciate it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for a lively discussion. They'll be here so you can talk to them individually. I'm getting the red X, so that's our time.
Awesome. Thank you
so
very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. One more round for the panel. All right.